Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss current affairs of 6th January 2021. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 6 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So let's get started with our discussion and let us see the first article. Title says Supreme Court cleared Centre's plan to build a 3 times bigger parliament. So this article mainly focusing on Central Vista project. So this article will be important regarding economy and as well as polity point of view. Economy comes under GS paper 3 and polity comes under GS paper 2. So this article will be especially important regarding prelims. So now we are going to discuss context and as well as timeline, and also we are going to see some facts regarding this Central Vista project. Now first let us see the context. Here Supreme Court in a majority judgment gave its go-ahead to multi-crore Central Vista redevelopment project. So this article mainly says that, so regarding this Central Vista redevelopment project, here now Supreme Court gave a green signal. So this is the news. So if you see, Supreme Court majorly said that, so if you're talking about this Central Vista redevelopment project, so there are some objections. So because of these objections, this case went to the Supreme Court. So in this Supreme Court, it mainly said that, it mainly gave the green signal to this Central Vista redevelopment project. So this Central Vista redevelopment project mainly proposes to build a new parliament which is 3 times bigger than the existing 93-year-old heritage building. So this article mainly says that now we are going for the redevelopment of the parliament building. So as of now we are having the parliament building which is 93 years of old. So now we are going for the Central Vista redevelopment project. And it also helps to modify by using about 86.1 acres of land. So this is the context. And now let us see the timeline. So in the September 2019, government in mainly announced Central Vista redevelopment project. So in the September 2019, and later on the February 2020, Delhi High Court mainly asked Delhi Development Authority to approach the court before notifying any change in this project. So in February 28 in 2020, so on this February 28, government mainly made the appeal to the Supreme Court, and in July Supreme Court started hearing this case, and in November Supreme Court reserved this as a verdict, and in the December 2020 Supreme Court allowed the centre to proceed with the foundation stone laying ceremony. And later on in January 2021, Supreme Court cleared this project. So this is about the timeline of this project. And now let us see some facts regarding this Central Vista project. So it is mainly announced or proposed by the Union Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And if you see, this project mainly envisages 3 important things. First of all, here is constructing a triangular parliament building. Next one is construction of a common secretariat, and third one is revamping 3 kilometers long Rajpath from Rashtrapati Bhavan to the India Gate. So these are the 3 important things under this project. And if you see that currently the Central Vista of New Delhi mainly contains Rashtrapati Bhavan, Parliament House, North and South Block, India Gate, National Archives. So these all are included in the current Central Vista. So these are the some important facts that you should remember. Now let us see the next article. Title says states on alert as fear of bird flu grows. So this article mainly focusing on bird flu. So it is also called as avian flu, avian influenza. So this article will be very important regarding environment and ecology, which comes under GS paper 3. And some facts regarding this bird flu will be important regarding prelims. Now let us see the context and as well as some important details which are highlighted in this article. So if you see the context, it mainly says that several states they sounded alert to contain or to prevent this avian influenza, that is H5N8 strain. So recently in the state of Kerala, there is an increased deaths of thousands of the ducks, and as well as in the state of Himachal Pradesh, there are about nearly 2,000 migratory birds they found dead, mainly near Pongyong Dam. And if you see in the states of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, they reported the deaths of hundreds of birds. So in this context, this bird flu is in news now. So now let us see some facts regarding this avian influenza. So this bird flu or avian influenza, which is a highly contagious virus, so it mainly affects the several species of the food producing birds. They include chickens, turkeys, quails and guinea fowls. So it also occasionally infects or affects the humans, but it is a very rare case. And if you see the types of influenza, there are three types: type A, type B and type C. Type A mainly causes diseases in the animals, so it is called as zoonotic virus. And type B and the type C, they are mostly infected in the humans. So if you are seeing substrain of this influenza A, they include H5N1, H7N9, H9N2. So these are the three important substrain of this influenza virus. And if you see what will be the impact. So whenever any poultry or any bird which is facing or which is suffering from this influenza, so that will lead to the death of that. So in this way, this bird influenza or the bird flu, that will lead to the devastating consequences for the country, particularly the poultry industry. This poultry industry will fall down. And the next one is farmers, they might experience a high level of mortality in the flocks. So about more than 50% of the flock death that is seen because of this influenza, because it is rapidly spreading. And if you are talking about prevention, we can go for the strict biosecurity measures. We can also maintain good hygiene wherever these birds live. And if you are talking about the India's status, India declared the free from avian influenza strain, that is H5N1, and also been notified to be the World Organization for the Animal Health. So it also been notified by this World Organization for the Animal Health. So what is this World Organization for Animal Health? So it is intergovernment organization which is mainly responsible for the improving of the animal health worldwide. So India is also the member of this World Organization for Animal Health. So in 2018, there are total about 182 member countries. So out of this, India also the one of the member. So if you see the headquarters, they are mainly located in the Paris, France. And if you see the next article, title says 2-day Asian water bird census off to flying start. So this article mainly focusing about Asian water bird census. So this article again important regarding environment and ecology. So which comes under GS paper 3. So you can expect some statements regarding this Asian water bird census in your prelims. So this topic will be important regarding prelims. Now let us see the context and as well as some details regarding this Asian water bird census. So if you see the context, it mainly says that 2-day Asian water bird census 2020, that is commenced in the Andhra Pradesh mainly under aegis of experts from Bombay Natural History Society. So this Bombay Natural History Society, it is NGO which is mainly important because it will conduct this Asian water bird census in the India. And if you see here, the major areas which are covered under this Asian water bird census include Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary, Koleru Lake and as well as Krishna Sanctuary. Not only this, there are about 24 sites which are also included in that. So now let us see some facts regarding the Asian bird life census. So if you are talking about this Asian water bird census, if you see, it was mainly started in 1987. So it is about Asian water bird census. So this Asian water bird census mainly started in the year 1987. And whatever the data which is collected by this Wetlands Internationals, because this Asian water bird census, it is one of the largest census in the Asia. So it is mainly organized by the Wetlands International. So this Wetland International mainly focused on the monitoring the status of the water birds and as well as the wetlands. So whatever the information which is collected by this Wetland International, so it will be shared with the global conservation organizations. For example, we can say Ramsar Conservation, which mainly talks about the conservation of the wetlands, and as well as IUCN. So the important aim of this census here is to increase the public awareness on the issues regarding the wetlands, wet water bird conservation, etc. And now let us see what are the objectives. Here there are three important objectives regarding this census. The first one is mainly to get information on annual basis regarding the water bird population at the wetlands. And this census mainly done in the non-breeding period, especially in the January. And the next one is to monitor the condition of the wetlands in the annual basis. So if at all there is any need for conservation, so that will be taken by the Ramsar. And the next one is to encourage the greater interest in the water birds and wetlands among the people, such that it will promote the conservation of the wetlands and as well as water bodies. So these are some important objectives. Now let us see the next one, that is Asian water bird census in India. So this will be done annually, and this will be mainly done by the Bombay Natural History Society, that is BNHS, and also Wetland International. So these two will undergo this census in India. So if you're talking about some facts regarding the Bombay Natural History Society, so it is an NGO which mainly founded in 1883. So the important function of this NGO here is to engage itself in the conservation of the nature and natural resources, and also in the research and conservation of the endangered species. So this is one important objective or function of this Bombay Natural History Society. And now let us see the next article. Title says PM inaugurates Kochi Mangaluru LNG pipeline, liquefied natural gas pipeline. So this article will be very important regarding economy point of view, which comes under GS paper 3. Now let us have a detailed discussion on this topic. First, let us see the context and as well as some important details, and also we are going to see one national, one gas grid. Okay, so that will be important regarding means. So the context says PM inaugurated, that is Prime Minister inaugurated Kochi Mangaluru LNG, that is liquefied natural gas pipeline. So this liquefied natural gas pipeline, that is from Kochi to Mangaluru, so it is as a part of efforts mainly to make India a natural gas based economy. So the one important aim of our government here, it is to move towards a natural gas based economy. So because of this LNG pipeline, it is one of the important steps that is taken towards India's natural gas based economy. And the next one is, according to this, there will be more than 10,000 natural gas based CNG stations. They would be opened in the several PNG household connections, that is piped natural gas connections. So this is about the context. So if you see in this context, our Prime Minister also said that it is one of the important part of one nation, one gas grid policy. So our government mainly coming up with the concrete plans towards the gas based economy. So why we are moving towards gas based economy? So if you are seeing the advantages, it is very much cheaper. It is also convenient and also environment friendly. So these are the advantages. So if you are talking about the aim of this gas based economy here is mainly to increase the share of natural gas in our energy sector. Present it is 6%. So from 6% we need to increase it to the 15% by 2030. So this is one of the important aim. And now let us see the functions or some of the important facts regarding this. What is this one nation, one gas grid? So if you see this one nation, one gas grid, at present about 16,788 kilometers of natural gas pipeline is in operation. So further there is 14,239 kilometers of gas pipeline, they are being developed. So whenever we are going for this natural gas pipeline infrastructure, so it will increase the availability of the natural gas across the country. So this is the first important thing regarding this one nation, one gas grid. And the next one is Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board. So it is one of the important authority mainly to grant authorization to the entities for the development of city gas distribution. So the one important thing that you should remember here is CGD, that is City Gas Distribution. So the authorization will be given by Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board. So if you are talking about city gas distribution, that is CGD, the important network of the pipelines that will help to supply the natural gas mainly to the domestic purpose, industrial purpose, and also for the commercial premises. So in this way, this city gas grid will be very important. And if you're talking about the vision of one nation, one gas grid, the first important one is to ensure the vibrant energy which marked with the rapid and orderly growth. So whenever we are going for the infrastructure in this pipeline project, that will also attract the investments in the country, and it will also provide some efficient transportation and distribution, mainly regarding the petroleum products and the natural gas. So this is a first important vision. And secondly, we can talk that it will also provide the high level of protection for the consumer interest. For example, it will ensure the free trade practices. Next one is competition among the entities. So these are the important vision regarding this one nation, one gas grid. Now let us see the next article. Title says changing contours of India-UK ties. So this article mainly talking about India-UK relations. So this article will be important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. So this topic will be important regarding mains. So one thing I want to make sure here is why India-UK relations are in news. The first and the foremost thing here is our Prime Minister of India invited the Prime Minister of UK for the Republic Day. So this is the first reason. And the second one is after post-Brexit era, what will be the relationship between the India and the UK? So because of these two things, this topic will be very important. Now let us try to understand this article in a great detail. So if you see the context, it mainly says that our Prime Minister invited the Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson, to Republic Day. But if you see in the UK, there is a new strain of mutated coronavirus that is increased spreading. So because of those reasons, that is due to the ravages of this COVID-19 mutations in UK, so PM of UK expressed that he is unable to attend the occasion. And in this context, let us try to understand the India-UK relations. So if you're talking about India and the UK relations, we have the shared past with the Britain, and also this article mainly highlighting that there is a need to chart a different shared future between the Britain and India, because Britain has left the European Union. So how the relationship going to be between the India and Britain? So this is the one important thing. So if you're talking here, that is United Nations Security Council. Here under this United Nations Security Council, we know there are 15 members, that is 5 permanent members and the 10 temporary or non-permanent members. So recently India elected as the 8th time for this UNSC, okay, UNSC non-permanent member. So if you're talking about the Britain, it is a permanent member of UNSC, and on the other side India, which is holding the non-permanent seat for this year and as well as next year. So because the tenure of this non-permanent seat here is 22 years. So for the 2 years, that is for this year and the next year, India will be the non-permanent member of UNSC. So on one side the Britain, it is a permanent member. On the second side India, which is a non-permanent member for 2 years as of now. So how the relationship that is going to be between these two countries? So this is the first thing. And the next one is Mr. Johnson will be hosting the India, and also he is inviting the India for the G7 and as well as United Nations Climate Change Conference. So whenever Prime Minister of UK who is inviting the Prime Minister of India, mainly for the G7 summit and other global summits, so it is one of the important steps. We can say that it is a good relations that to be going to be happen between the India and the UK. And if you're talking about the relationship and the dilemmas between the UK and Britain and India, the first one is that is trade agreement. So here we signed the trade agreement with the European Union as a whole in the year 2007. So in this agreement, Britain was the main deal breaker between the European Union and India. So in this context, European Union mainly wanted to reduce the duty mainly on the products like autos, automobiles, wines, spirits, etc. And also India to open the financial sectors like banking, insurance, postal, legal, accountancy, security, maritime, etc. So in all these sectors, Britain or UK mainly want some opening of these sectors. In return, India also always sought for the free movement as well, free movement of the service professionals, because we are good at services rather than manufacturing, right? So if you're talking about the post-Brexit era, in this post-Brexit era also, between the Britain and India, we have the same obstacles. If you're talking about the exports of the both the countries, they are predominantly service-based exports. So they are mainly talking about the free movement of professionals. If you're talking about the services and the free trade agreement, India came out of the RCEP, that is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, recently in the November 2019. One of the important issue mainly cited by the India is services are not included under the free trade agreement which is signed under this RCEP. And also there are some concerns regarding the country of origin, percentage of the value addition, etc. So because of these concerns, India came out of the RCEP. So because of this, India it is very cautious about mainly negotiating any new trade agreement. So mainly to increase the relationship between the India and the Britain, they need to go for discrete agreement. So this discrete agreement that to be settled between the India and the Britain regarding the pharmaceuticals, financial things, financial technology, chemicals, defense production, petroleum, food products, etc. And if you're talking about the close relationship between the India and the Britain, 1.5 million people of Indian origin, they are present in the Britain, and out of that 15 members are member of parliamentarians in the UK, and out of that 3 members are the cabinet members. And the next one is about 30,000 Indians, they study in the Britain annually, and 500,000 tourists from the India, they will go to the Britain for the tourism purpose, and in return twice of the Britons they will come to India for the tourism. And Britain is also one of the among top investors in the India, and India is also second biggest investor in the Britain, and also it is also major creator of jobs because there are many companies which are based on the India, they are present in the Britain. Okay, so these are the some important close relations between the Britain and India. Okay, so these are the some important things which are highlighted in this article. Now let us see the next article. Title says the dark step of writing hate into law. So before seeing this article, I want to make a small announcement. So as you all know, we are coming up with the current affairs package course. So the registration for that course will be started from 6 p.m. from today onwards. So this course will be very useful for the prelims and as well as mains. So we are especially focusing on mains answer writing practice and essay practice, prelims practice and weekly current affairs. So this will be highly economic and as well as highly beneficial to the students. Okay, so if you are interested, please register to that course. And now let's come back and let us see this article. So title says that the dark step of writing hate into the law. So this article is mainly talking about some of the states, they came up with the new laws. So those new laws are mainly against some important constitutional provisions. So this article mainly highlighting about which are the constitutional provisions that are violated because of this new laws. So this article will be important regarding polity point of view, which comes under GS paper 2. And this topic will be especially important regarding mains. Now let us have a detailed discussion on this topic. So if you see the background, this background it is nicely written. Charan Singh, the former Prime Minister who made a proposal to the Prime Minister in 1954 that he want to pass a law. So this law mainly talks that if at all they want to get the gazetted officers, so these gazetted officers, they could only be for those who wanted to marry or who already married the outside their caste. That means they are promoting the intercaste marriages. But this proposal was struck down mainly because this proposal mainly struck the exercise of free will of individuals of citizens of India. So it is against the free will of individuals regarding the marriage. So because of this proposal mainly struck down. So if you are seeing the present thing which is happening in the states, UP, that is Uttar Pradesh, came up with the ordinance. So that ordinance mainly criminalizes the intra-faith marriages, or we can say interfaith marriages or inter-religious marriages or inter-caste marriages. So this ordinance mainly want to protect the Hindu women from marrying the Muslim men. And the next one is Uttarakhand. So Uttarakhand state came up with one important decision. So it said that the Social Welfare Department mainly highlighted a scheme and this scheme which is mainly incentivizing the interfaith or intercaste marriage. So if you see within a country, we have the states. So one state is having the different opinion regarding the interfaith marriage, and one another state having the different faith. One state which is opposing and another state which is supporting here. So if you are talking about the history of the interfaith or intercaste marriages, in 1872, Brahma Samaj mainly demanded that people of different backgrounds, they can be allowed to marry according to their rights of conscience. So now they want to allow the intercaste or interfaith marriages even back in 1872. And after we got independence in the independent India, we came up with the Special Marriage Act of 1954. Mainly it gives some provisions regarding the intercaste marriage. And if you see nowadays, recently there are many laws came up by the states regarding the slaughter of cows, regarding the marriage, religious conversions, etc. So if you see these laws in the states, they are mainly targeting the Muslims here. So whenever they are targeting the Muslims, they mainly deny the shared social spaces, their rights as equal as citizens of republic. So as we know, all the citizens are equal, right? So we do not divide the citizens on the basis of their religion. So whenever we are dividing the citizens on the basis of their religion and we are denying some shared social spaces, then it will be violation of our constitution itself. And if you're targeting this Muslims, so that will also destroy the long-standing fraternity. Fraternity means the brotherhood feeling among the citizens. So that will be destroyed. So it is also one of the important feature of our constitution. And if you see what will be the impact of this new laws, first let us see the important one. So firstly we can say new laws, they treat the religious communities as a whole instead of individual citizens as a basic entities. So we are not taking into account individual citizens but as a religion group as a whole. And the next one is, whenever we are talking about the split between the Hindus and the Muslims, the fundamental modern characteristics of guaranteed of autonomy to the citizens of India as an individual will be broken. So that means we are splitting this Hindus from the Muslims, then it may also lead to the communal violence in the area. And as well as whenever we are going for the splitting of this Hindus and the Muslims, then what happened? Then the modern characteristics that is guaranteed, that is autonomy which is guaranteed by our constitution, this is also eroded. And the next one is, it violates the right to privacy. So as we know, this right to privacy is very important and is also a fundamental right in the Supreme Court judgment in 2017. So if you're talking about how it violates the right to privacy, here whenever state is interfering in the intercaste or the interfaith marriages, then it will also solemnize the relationship between the two persons or the two individuals here. So because of this, it mainly breaches the basic structure of the constitution. And the next one is, it also provides a provision for the impede the exercise of an individual's right to choose their faith. That means it is mainly violating the individual right of choosing their faith. So if you are talking about the fundamental rights which are present in the part 3 of our Indian constitution, so article 25 to article 28 mainly talks about right to religious freedom. So those rights are mainly guaranteed, correct? So those rights will be violated. And the next one is, these new laws, they are mainly patriarchal in nature. So why patriarchal? It mainly talks about the conversion of the women into the other caste. So it is not talking about the men but women. So because of this, we can say there is a patriarchal mindset in these new laws as well. So these are some important things which are discussed in this article, and this is the gist of the article. I hope it is clear now. Now let us see the next question. Question here is, the new marriage laws put state power and law behind the majoritarian communal bias. Discuss. So try to write the answer. Answer should not be more than 150 words. So these are some important articles which appeared in the today's Hindu newspaper. So by this we are concluding today. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. The notes of this lecture will be given in the description box.